Chapter 26, Twin Peaks. Chapter 29, Dom and Antz. The way Luke moved was cocky and cool. It was his demeanor from the day I met him. I looked over at Sai. She was nervous, and it was written all over her face. Benjamin dropped his hood as he walked to meet Luke in the middle of the arena. He was around the same height as Luke, but that was about the only thing the two boys had in common. The boy's hair was in a feminine ponytail, and he walked and talked with a feminine accent that gave the impression he was a girl the first couple times I saw him. Sai stared at the boy nervously, fidgeting before placing her arms around her, comforting her. Luke showed no signs of being nervous or scared. He cracked his knuckles, almost giddy in his anticipation. "Sai, how are you doing?" Pete replied via BAU. It made me smile a little. Pete gave Sai comfort like she was about to fight. He stared like she was the last and only girl on the planet. Her hair blew in the wind as she nervously bit down on her bottom lip in a way that made his heart flutter. She had many nervous tics, but this one was a dead giveaway. She turned to us, not trying to hide her demeanor at all. "Not good, Pete," she replied, trying her best to look forward. Pete's eyes narrowed at the sound of her words. He hated to see her uncomfortable. It was admirable how he noticed the slightest change in her demeanor. I thought back, and I felt guilty for how I felt earlier. If anyone would or could make Sai happy, it would be Pete. I don't know what I was thinking. I smiled, looking at the two of them. They were my best friends, and we were a trio. The thought of being a +1 had me nervous, but the way Pete cared for Sai was enough to soften my stance against the arrangement. He deserved a shot to make her happy. I decided I would do everything in my power to make sure he got it. "Why? What's going on?" I broke in, seeing if I could help Pete. "Yeah, Luke can take this guy," Eve added. Sai nodded, but it wasn't an affirming nod. It fell between a secret headshake and a shrug. "Still, it's my brother," she replied, explaining further. "Thinking about how much of a lunatic that girl is, I'm worried. What if their whole family is like that? You know, unbalanced. And even worse, Luke hasn't been a Christian that long. His faith is unstable. I'm not sure he's ready for this." Her words stuck. With all the things that transpired from the time we arrived, I forgot I was pulling him from purgatory a month earlier. It was dicey. Luke was so skilled, it slipped my mind how young he was in the faith. It was my fault. I put him in a terrible predicament without knowing it. Things were going so fast that we barely had time to catch our breaths, let alone focus long enough to think these things through. Luke was powerful, but she was right. Could his faith endure these trials? He had done well so far, but this time he wouldn't have us. These trials tested our faith as much as our abilities. Now my stomach was beginning to flip as my nerves kicked in. Everyone seemed to be thinking the same thing I was. You can tell she had our sympathy. The crowd bounced in anticipation. But inside our barrier, we were all on pins and needles. The only one left on the Alpha's side was the Eli kid, and he was like a monk. I watched him closely the entire time, and outside of a couple glances at Sai, he was like a statue. In fact, throughout the entirety of the trials, I don't think he moved once. He looked focused, and looked like he wasn't going to be a walk in the park for anyone. And if his power was anything like Jacob and I was worried for Sai. "What's with that kid?" I mumbled, staring at him. Sam nodded, walking over to me. "You've noticed too, huh?" Sam shot. I nodded in his direction. "Yeah, he hasn't moved since we arrived. Not a smile, a chuckle, a smirk, nothing. If I couldn't smell his scent, I would have thought he was a robot," he continued. Our words caused Eve to turn to him. "I hadn't noticed," Eve replied, "but now that you mention it, he does look kind of intimidating." Sai sighed, crossing her arms as she looked toward the banner. could you guys do me a favor and not point out how intimidating the guy I'm going to have to fight is? I mean, I have enough to worry about." Eve grimaced apologetically. "Sorry, Sai," she replied. "But look on the bright side. If Luke wins, it's over." "Yeah, I know," Sai shot back. "I'm just a little nervous about my brother. It's just—" "I know, but if anybody can pull it off, Luke can," Sam added, his heart beating so fast I could actually feel it. Sai smiled, staring at Luke as he nodded, acknowledging the proctor. It was like she was trying to force herself out of her funk, but no matter what she did, I could feel how worried she was. It was so heavy it was starting to weigh on me. "I trust my brother, but these trials, they seem to test the worst part of our faith, and the things that we hide seem to come to the light. I just don't think my brother is ready to have his skeletons brought to the light. You guys weren't here to witness our training on the summit," Sai expressed, as Luke winked at Jacob and I confidently. "Why is everyone so quiet?" Luke broke in, killing our BAU conversation. We had kept our conversation on a private frequency to keep Luke out of the loop, but he had obviously picked up on the lack of talk over the BAU comm. "I'm sorry, Luke," Sai replied, trying to hide the tremble in her voice. His face immediately changed at the sound of her words. He turned, staring in her direction. "What's the matter, Spaz?" Luke replied. Spaz was a pet name Luke called Sai. No matter the time, temperance, or situation, much to Sai's chagrin, it was reminiscent of my hatred for the Timmy moniker Jacob used to get under my skin. She ignored it this time, which only served to further tip Luke off that something was up. "Come on, Spaz. I know I'm about to do this, but you can tell me. Seriously," he pried. "It's not like it's the first time you've pulled me into a fight." "Yeah, if pull means begging you to stop," she replied with a grin. "Regardless, Luke, don't worry about me. Focus on him." Luke nodded with a smile. "You still don't get it yet, do you?" he shot, turning toward her. "You help me focus. Trust me, I won't let anybody talk to my kid's sister like that. I've been watching tape on this kid all week. I'm a quarterback, remember? I'm used to learning my opponent. This kid is good, but I'm better." Sai smiled, shaking her head. "Seriously, Luke, I know you're confident, but remember, you're just starting. Don't get too cocky. It raises the chances of you forgetting the reason you're here. Your faith isn't as strong as the rest of us, so I know he's going to test you. Remember, salvation isn't earned, okay?" Sai replied. "You belong here, just like the rest of us, Luke." He nodded, showing a slightly insecure demeanor, taking her words as the proctor finished explaining the rules to the crowd. "Yay!" The crowd erupted in cheers in anticipation as the proctor signaled for both Luke and Benjamin to go to their separate sides of the arena. "Come on, Luke, you got this," Uriah added. As they both stopped, the proctor stared at them both, scanning them to see if they were prepared to begin. He stared forward as the crowd rose in anticipation, going crazier with every passing second. "You've been saying you're going to force me to shut up about your sister, right, doll? Well, pretty boy, don't get my hopes up for nothing." Benjamin stirred, walking toward Luke with his hands in his pockets. "Here's your chance." Luke smiled, unfazed by his words. "Yes, this is," Luke replied. "Begin!" the proctor shouted. Wham! A trail of dust followed Benjamin as he flew across the arena. Boom! He exploded against the wall with crushing force. "To keep it 100 with you," Luke replied, tossing his hood over his head, "if you don't kick that power up a notch, this fight will be over soon." We were completely speechless. The crowd was cheering, but we were still trying to figure out what had happened. "Was that a punch? It was too fast for me to catch," Pete added. "Man, he's as fast as Jacob," Sam shot. Benjamin dusted himself off, staring at Luke with a smile on his face. He began a full-on chuckle that sent a chill up me. I looked over at Sai as she jostled back and forth. I could feel her heartbeat, and it was beating double time. I was surprised she was able to hold it together. That blow was ridiculous, and the guy didn't have a scratch on him. What was this kid? "So, at least you're not just talk," he replied, cracking his neck. "So, crypto hand, huh?" Luke looked like he had no clue what Benjamin was talking about. His eyes narrowed, perplexed by the boy's words. "Crypto what? What is he talking about?" I asked, turning to Jade. "What are you talking about?" Luke seconded. "Luke, you don't know you're using a light art technique," Eve added. "How is that even possible?" "Wait, it's Luke. Of course it's possible." "Pinky, I'm an innovator. I don't copy. This is my technique. I don't bite," Luke added. "Well, whether you meant to or not, that fighting style is derivative of an angelic fighting style called the Crypto Zeri. I have no doubt you didn't steal it. How could you have? It's generally only taught in the Light Guard Academy," Max interjected. "So what, this technique, it makes him as fast as Jacob?" Sai added. "Yeah, is he really that fast?" Eve shot, turning to Jade. I shook my head, catching everyone's attention. "No, or at least, I didn't see that. Even though the rest of you couldn't follow Jacob, I saw him move, even if it was just glancing blurs. But this was different. Luke never moved, not a muscle," I explained. "I was watching him. He's either faster than Jacob, or he's doing something completely different." Max looked at me with an approving smile. "Exactly," Max intervened. "Your perception really is remarkable." Yeah, we get it. Tim's amazing," Sam shot sarcastically. "What is Luke doing?" Max sighed, rolling his eyes unamused before continuing. "The crypto hand is a technique that only people like Luke can use. Wormhole manipulation mixed with his Dom ability is very rare, especially in this realm. It manifests itself from the flight gene and usually only manifests in borderline Christians. They're used to being chameleons of sorts. Their entire lives they live in many different worlds, seamlessly adapting. So naturally, their ability allows them to operate in many worlds using the portals we use to transition from world to world. The crypto technique allows a person to strike from anywhere at any time. So, a punch or kick can come from any spot, at any angle, at any time. It is almost impossible to block." "That's a good thing, right?" I replied, sensing an uneasiness in his biorhythm. He smiled, noticing what I was picking up on, impressed with my deduction skills once again. "Well, it's also unstable because of Luke's borderline condition," Max explained apologetically. "It's like a mansion built on sand. It's fickle. Using it leaves him vulnerable until his faith can grow." Pete turned to him, dumbfounded by his words. "So he shouldn't be using it?" Pete added emphatically. Max shook his head, causing us all to share Pete's skepticism. "Probably not, but it's like telling someone not to use their right hand when they're right-handed in a fight," Max rebutted. "It's the way he naturally fights." "Then we help him fight left-handed," Pete shot, determined. His words caused everyone to become uneasy. I knew Pete, and there was something more to this. He cared about Luke, but I can tell protecting him wasn't his end goal. It's the same stubborn look he would get whenever he was losing a game. It wasn't a good look, because it was generally followed by something incredibly stupid. "Well, him fighting left-handed is not him fighting at his best," Max continued. "And he needs to be at his best fighting this kid, or he'll lose." I knew what was coming next. The same thing that usually followed a showcase of immaturity by Pete. Something completely asinine. I was happy we had the presence of mind to keep Luke blocked from our conversation, but Sai's attention was locked. "Well, if Luke loses, we forfeit then," he replied. catching everyone's attention. "Come on, Pete," I replied. "We don't have to forfeit. 2 on 2, what's the big deal?" Pete's eyes turned to me, almost betrayed by my words. "Are you serious? Did you forget what you said to me earlier this week?" he replied. I was completely caught off guard by his words. "What? What are you talking about?" I replied, thrown. He walked toward me in an accusing manner. "You said this competition comes second. Sai should come first," Pete shot. "You saw what his crazy cousin did to Beth. This guy looks even nuttier than she is. You're crazy if you think I'm allowing him to get anywhere near Sai." It finally sunk in. This whole thing was about Sai. The way he'd been watching her. It wasn't infatuation, it was worry. My words had stuck with him, but he had to know the difference. He couldn't believe I meant this was what I wanted. Jade had given us the heads up going into the competition that Sai had a waiver that she could void if need be. The hope and plan was to keep her on the sideline. They were 2 of the top prospects on the top prospect legion in the trials. Forfeiting was out of the question. It was almost insulting to ask Sai to do that. "Come on, Pete, you know this is different," I shot back. "Sai is disqualified unless she's forced to fight, but Uriah is also on the docket. If Luke loses and she forfeits, it leaves Uriah to fight the remaining 2 alone." "I don't care," Pete responded angrily. "Well, I do," Sai shot, staring from her area directly at Pete. "I don't need you to protect me, Pete. You don't get to make that decision. I trust my brother, but even if he can't beat this guy and it falls on me, then so be it. But it's my decision to make, and I would never quit on my legion and leave Uriah to fight my battle." Pete stared at her, slightly embarrassed. "I wasn't saying," Pete mumbled. "I know what you're saying, Pete," she replied with a smile. "I'm the one that ended up in a basement hell with you because I couldn't bear seeing you get hurt. I know what you mean. Trust me. I love you for always being there for me when I need you, but you can't ask me to do that. You just can't." Pete agreed, walking away stubbornly, embarrassed. He looked like a wounded dog as the rest of our attention shifted back to Luke and Benjamin. We all acknowledged his words as we prepared to watch these 2 A+ prospects go at it. I hoped Luke had what it took, because as much as I disagreed with Pete's plan, I no more wanted to see Sai against the guy than he did. Pete does kind of have a point, though, about the strategy. I mean, face it, if this guy is more powerful than that girl, Caddy, this might not go as well as we hoped, Eve added. Sam turned to the arena as Benjamin and Luke faced off. "Well, like we did with Danielle, we're just going to have faith in him, or for him," Sam replied, his eyes lighting up. Jacob scoffed out loud at our words. "You guys act like he's lost already," Jacob replied. "Nah, you guys don't know Luke." As he spoke, Benjamin walked toward Luke. As he did, he slowly picked up pace. "Vanish!" He disappeared as Benjamin vanished. "Man, he's quick," Eve replied. "Punch!" He appeared, throwing a punch as Luke stood unmoved. "What is he doing? Dodge!" I screamed. Whoosh! As Benjamin swung, it was like Luke was invisible. His punch went through him like a gust of wind. "I'm sure you're not dumb enough to not know I can do that," Luke replied with a sarcastic grin. "But I'll take this opportunity in anyways." Flip! Luke leaped backward, prepping a flipping front kick. Wham! He caught him flush as Benjamin flew high in the air. Luke took a deep breath, closing his eyes. Whoosh! As his eyes opened, his power exploded, covering him in black flames, or at least they seemed to be at first. But as the seconds passed, they slowly morphed into tiny fists that hovered behind him like a tail and wings. "What is that?" I replied, turning to Jacob. "The Million Palm," he replied. "If you think it looks cool, just see what he can do with it." Ha! Ha! Luke grunted, concentrating. Slowly his hands began to move as Benjamin soared high in the sky. It's showtime, Luke replied, smiling, as his eyes blinked black, then white vacants showcasing hues of white. The hands moved like grinding gears as Luke stood perfectly still in the midst of the chaos. Benjamin's body convulsed rapidly as Luke's hands appeared all around him, pummeling with hit after hit before finally hammering him toward the ground. Holy crap! Sam exclaimed. Awesome! Pete seconded. Boom! Benjamin landed with an explosion, creating a crater in the ground below. The blows had taken their toll. It wasn't a kill shot by far, but it was obvious Benjamin felt the power of Luke's punches. Amazing, Eve replied. It looks like that old statue of that blue woman with all the hands. Max turned to her, piqued by her words. Kali, the Nephilim, Max replied. Who? I replied, turning to him. Kali is the demon goddess in Hindu, Pete replied. That's the cover story, Max replied. In actuality, she's a granddaughter of one of the Watchers. Good eye, Eve. She's also a wormhole manipulator. She's used blood sacrifices to fuel her power, but her talent is the same. Luke closed his eyes once again, exhaling as if to be powering down as he stared at Benjamin. Your insistence on playing won't end well, Luke replied, smiling. Drop the act and get out here. I know that blow had little effect on you. Ha! Benjamin arose from the fog of the attack, chuckling loudly. Impressive, Benjamin replied, knocking the dust off his clothing. Like I said, I've been studying you for days. I know that isn't 5% of your power, Luke replied. His words bowled me over. Of course, Benjamin had shown little offensively, but to withstand an attack like that without a scratch, it was a feat to behold. I was getting more nervous with every word spoken. Good guess, but I'm using so little of my power, it wouldn't even register as a percent, Benjamin replied, staring at Luke with a cocky snort. Luke chuckled, throwing us even further into a flux. Benjamin stared at him, a bit thrown by his demeanor as well. He wore a look that fell between intimidated and shocked. Well, that's good, because just like you haven't even begun to see what I can do yet, Luke shot. Jacob chuckled, causing everyone to turn to him. Like I said, I know what a dog Luke is, Jacob replied, staring forward, unflinching. Benjamin looked at Luke with a playfully sarcastic look of fear. He began to chuckle loudly, staring at Luke as if he couldn't help himself, sarcastically apologizing. Game recognizes game, and I know a bluff when I see it, Luke replied with a sarcastic smile of his own. You can play cool to these people, but you're nervous. These eyes peeped game a long time ago. I don't miss anything. I've seen it in the face of every person that has stood in front of me. Coach Paul used to call it a presence that I had. He chuckled to himself. Benjamin didn't change, unfazed by his words. Luke showcased a warning smile as he stared at him. I always hated that phrasing, he replied as his gaze became colder. It was goofy. It seemed fugazi. Because real talk, a presence implies that it's a force of nature, like it just happens, like it's an act of chance. I always hated that. It ignores the most important thing. Most goofies aren't built and buckle, and I can see it in you. I saw it from the moment you insulted my sister. You're shook. You're used to people being afraid of you and treading lightly. But the hyena is only king until the lion arrives. You didn't see fear, not an ounce. You just saw me. I'm 10 toes down with my shoulders squared with no back down. That's what separates me from you. Determination is the bedrock of faith. I had faith in myself like you wouldn't believe, and I was good. Now imagine what my determination is now that I know what to truly have faith in. You felt me from the moment I spoke to you. My faith energy is stronger than yours, and you know it." "Are you serious?" Benjamin replied. "Pretty boy, this isn't that piss pot of a world you left. It's the heaven realm." His words cut. I turned to Pete, who stared at me with an annoyed headshake. "This guy's a real jerk," Sam added, squinting angrily. He feigned humor and indifference, but I could tell with my extra sensitive touch. It was a facade. Luke was right. I didn't know if Luke was more powerful. I couldn't tell, but Benjamin was definitely nervous. His heartbeat was a dead giveaway. But along with that nervousness, I could feel a sense of confidence underneath that was unwavering. "Sweet cheeks, you can't quantify the power of a Nazarite," he shot dismissively, waving his hand in a feminine manner. "I could obliterate this entire arena if I truly powered up. That's one thing you Earthborn prospects always forget, and it's the worst thing to forget. It ain't about how much faith energy you have. It's about how much you can utilize." Luke laughed out loud. "Exactly. And that's your problem," Luke shot. "You have to power up." Flash! Luke moved without warning. I turned to Jacob, who continued to stare forward without flinching. I wondered if he could see it as well. Sai cracked her knuckles angrily, engrossed in the exchange. I surveyed the group, affirming what I already believed. They didn't see anything, but that was about to change. "Where did Luke go?" Sam asked, staring at the blank spot where Luke disappeared. I saw everything in slow motion as Luke moved. I could tell from the start it was a bad move. Benjamin was not off guard. I watched his eyes from the moment Luke moved, and he followed him step for step, yet he didn't change his stance at all. He was prepared and unfazed by Luke's attack, which was a very bad sign. Woo! Luke thrusted a fist forward as Ben stared him down with a quick spark of light in his eyes that was so quick that it would be a stretch to call it a blink. He didn't flinch as he stretched his hand out, stopping Luke in mid-punch. He held the lightning in his hand like it was a snow cone. "Not against you, I don't," Benjamin shot. "No way," Eve responded. "He just caught a point-blank lightning shot with his bare hands." Pete shook his head in awe. "I know it wasn't Luke at full power, but that? It's crazy," he seconded. Shot! The lightning dissipated into Benjamin and sent an electrical current throughout his body. He cocked back and exploded through Luke, sending him flying in the opposite direction. "Luke!" Sai shouted. "Man!" Sam grunted. Luke sizzled as he flew against the arena wall with an explosion. "He just performed the same technique Danielle did, only a lot faster," Pete replied. I nodded, agreeing with his words. "Exactly. This kid is no novice," Jade responded. "Luke can't take him lightly like that again. This IQ is off the charts." "He's lucky that stunt didn't cost him the match," Max criticized. "What stunt? He saw an opening and he took it," Jacob cut back. "I would have done the same thing. Luke's a close-range fighter. One hit can lead to 100. He would have been stupid to pass that opening up." Max cut his eyes at Jacob. The tension between the two had died since their first altercation, but I could still feel the animosity between the two. It was uncomfortable, and I could tell Jacob's words ate at him. "No, Jacob, it was stupid to take that risk," Max shot back angrily. "Benjamin is a counter-striker. Making yourself vulnerable that soon was a risk. He went all out. He didn't even prepare himself for a counter against a counter-striker. You might think you're a hotshot kid, but trust me, I know a lot more about this stuff than you do." Jacob cut his eyes at him. "Yeah, just not enough to be ignorant," Jacob shot, causing everyone to turn. "You of all people should know one of your students. You should know Luke's predicament. You should know why it's important for him to take that risk and end this thing as fast as he can." Max took in Jacob's words with a regretful grimace. Their exchange piqued my interest. What was he talking about? "Jacob, what do you mean?" I asked, turning to him. Flash! Before the dust could clear, Luke jumped on the offensive before Jacob had a chance to respond. He looked furious as his hair blew in the wind. He slowly appeared as the debris and fog dissipated. Fit, block! Fit, block! Punches came at Benjamin in waves as he dodged them with his hands still in his coat. He looked like he was waiting on a train as he dodged Luke's attacks with ease. Luke was a terrible long-range fighter, even with his ability. He was used to being in the thick of things, but at that distance, Benjamin could see his punches coming from a mile away. The second or so it took to create those wormholes were costing him reaction time. "What is this? He's toying with him!" Pete uttered, flabbergasted. "No way," Eve replied. "You'll see. Luke will catch him, sooner or later." "No, he won't," I shot, correcting Pete and Eve immediately. "He's setting him up." Jacob turned to me, sucking his teeth loudly, growing impatient. It had to be eating at him. It couldn't be easy having to watch his best friend in such a predicament. Jacob was usually a rock, but this trial had him on edge. It made me uncomfortable. "Wait, what?" Sai replied, turning to me. I quickly tried to formulate a counter, but I hadn't seen enough of Luke's ability to form anything. All I could do was let Luke know what was going on, and hope he had better luck cracking this guy's defense than I did. "Luke, he's trying to bait you," I instructed. "He what?" Luke replied. "He's powering up for something. Look at the back of his leg," I shot. He continued to dodge as Luke became more agitated by the second. "Can't see anything. He's moving too fast," Pete grunted. "Luke, Tim's right," Jacob shot. "The guy's setting up something big. I just don't have a bead on it yet. Hold back for a second. Regroup. You're just wasting energy with this." Luke grunted loudly, ignoring Jacob's words. "Well, let's see how he does with this," Luke shot. "He's trying to make me look stupid, and it's pissing me off." I cringed at his words. "Miss, block, miss, block, fit, block, miss." His hands looked like dots. They were moving faster, but Benjamin still dodged them with ease. "Luke, will you listen to them, please?" Sai shot. "No, he thinks he's setting me up? Well, he's right where I want him," Luke exclaimed. "He's mine!" Flash! A loud flashbang-like explosion lit up the sky, causing us all to cover our eyes. Benjamin wasn't going for it as he stared across, never taking his eyes off Luke. Before I could respond, Luke let his guard down, going into a full-throttle assault, putting all his energy into landing a close-range blow to initiate a close-range battle. It was too soon, and Benjamin still had a strong base. He hadn't knocked him off his square to attempt an attack like that. He was impatient and reckless. It wasn't like Luke. Something was wrong. I had to do something. "Luke, no!" I shot. Kick! Boom! He smiled as he dodged Luke with ease, then nailed him with a crippling sidekick that sent him into a nearby wall. I cringed as the boulders holding the arena together tumbled down on him. "What was that?" Pete shot. I shook my head as Max grunted loudly. "Luke's being impatient. I understand why, but he's got to think of something else. A direct attack isn't going to work. This kid's dangerous. Luke won't get away with risks like that for long." "I'd smoke this kid in 2 seconds," Jacob grunted angrily. "Well, he isn't you," Max shot. His words seemed to burn Jacob as he crossed his arms angrily, staring forward. "Tim, what do you see?" Sai asked, chiming in, ending the awkward exchange. He was baiting Luke. He was dodging as if he was toying with Luke, but that wasn't the case. Watch his feet, I explained. Like I said before, he was powering up. I remembered it from Eve's fight with Cadmiel. They all stared at the screen as the broadcast replayed the act. There, I pointed out. He's powering up. He was using as little energy as possible to slowly power up. He hid it from Luke by sending it from his feet, not from his stomach like that girl Cadmiel did. I see it. Tim's right, Sai seconded. Look at his hair. He's powered up to Tier 2. His hair had grown exponentially. His power-up was less obvious than Cadmiel. If it wasn't for my astute eye, I don't think anyone would have noticed what he was doing. Sean was right. This guy was nothing like Cadmiel. Cadmiel was a hothead, but this kid was smart, cool, and calculating. It wasn't going to be easy to beat him. He was an experienced fighter, and it was obvious. He played Luke like a fiddle. This guy was a master strategist. I was more instinctual in my countering, but this guy used everything at his disposal, and he was quick. Burst! Luke exploded with power, disintegrating the boulders that covered him. Do you still think you got me pegged, pretty boy? Benjamin mocked. Luke dusted himself off. Benjamin stared, flamboyantly tossing his hair out of his face. It hung down to his shoulders as he dusted off his uniform. He didn't flinch at Luke's angry stare. Yeah, I do, Luke replied. Swish! Luke took a swipe, knocking Benjamin off guard. Get him, Luke! Sam screamed. No, be careful, Luke! Sai added. Foot! Luke sent a teleported front kick, causing Benjamin to dodge backwards. I noticed it immediately. Luke had set him up. I smiled, staring at the porthole that opened inches behind Benjamin's head. He didn't see it, and he had a perfect lock on the back of his head. He was going for his hair. It was his only chance, and he had a perfect bead on it. Great move! I shot, excited. Slice! We all stared in awe as Luke swiped at Benjamin's hair, missing what looked like a clear opening. I saw it immediately, but I was so disoriented I didn't think to clue everyone else in. To be honest, I wasn't sure if my eyes were playing tricks on me. Honestly, what I was seeing wasn't meshing with what was supposed to be happening. He had him, I shot angrily, catching everyone's attention. What are you talking about? Eve shot. Luke just sliced that kid's hair. It's time for some payback. I shook my head, confused. It was like I was having a brain malfunction. I should have been thinking about warning Luke, but my mind was still trying to make sense of what I saw. I fought through my state, but I couldn't manage clear instructions. I just shouted the first thing that came to mind. No! I shot. They all cheered in adulation, ignoring my words. Jacob picked up on it as well. He grunted, and I could tell he was going through a similar dilemma. He looked at me when I spoke, which took his focus off Luke. The momentary gaffe prevented him from warning Luke as well. Now that I got that out of the way, Luke shot, time for us to get a little closer. My eyes grew big as I rushed to speak a coherent sentence, but now I was going through a double Dutch feeling. I wasn't sure if I should speak or wait on Jacob to speak, which only caused neither one of us to speak up. Flash! Luke landed inches in front of Benjamin, cocking back to deliver a finishing blow. But before he could, he met Benjamin's eyes. A look of sarcasm and bliss filled his demeanor as he smiled from ear to ear. Luke realized, along with the rest of the crew, what I had been fumbling to say, and I couldn't get it out in time. Luke was in no man's land, and this time Benjamin was at Tier 2. It wasn't going to be a slight bump. This one was going to hurt. Luke, no! I managed. I was far too late, and I knew it, but it was like my brain was printing out backed up messages as I sputtered to speak. Wham! Benjamin landed a blow that was glancing but devastating. He caught Luke with a flipping front kick to the chin that was so violent I thought his head was going to detach from the rest of his body. "Luke!" Sai wished aloud. "This kid is no joke," Pete shot. "He's a pro," Sean added. "Out of everyone over there, Benji and Tommy were the ones I worried about the most," Sean added. "You can see why. They are not just powerful, they're well-disciplined and well-trained. I knew they would be your biggest obstacles because of the inexperience in this legion." Luke flipped like a crashed plane, flopping around into various pillars, causing me to wince every time he went through one. I looked over at Sai, who cringed and turned away after each collision. She looked like a fan watching their favorite team getting throttled. All she could do was stand and watch and hope things got better. "I told you, Precious, you don't belong here," Benjamin replied, powering up another level. "What did he say?" I shot. Max motioned for me to wait, which only confused me more. I turned to see Sai fuming, and I understood immediately the reason for his discretion. Luke struggled to stand. His power was non-existent. I couldn't feel it. What was going on? "Man, I want to destroy this kid," Sam muttered, his power seeping out. "I don't feel any faith energy," I replied, turning to Jade. "What's going on?" He shook his head apologetically. Jacob turned away angrily, trying to hide his frustration. Things were getting dicey by the second, and there was something Max, Sai, and Jacob weren't telling us. It was becoming more evident with every glance and coded response. "He doesn't have any," Jacob added angrily. "He's letting this blowhard psych him out." "Faith energy, as we have explained before, it's the faith you have in God's faith in you, which in itself is the same as not having faith in Father Yahweh," Jade added. "If you don't have faith in Father Yahweh, then there is no faith energy." Sai's head dropped at the sound of Jacob's and Jade's words. She knew he was telling the truth. That's why I couldn't feel him. Wham! Before Luke could blink, Benjamin struck again. "You have no idea how annoyed I am that a tweener has the nerve to believe he belongs in this competition," Benjamin replied angrily. "I'm all for salvation, but this isn't for beginners, good looking. If you have any dignity for this realm or its inhabitants, you'll leave. It's not a big enough disgrace that you're in this realm, but you have the audacity to think you deserve to be here fighting for what real Christians have given millenniums to attain, all because you're lucky enough to be picked by an Eli. Tell the truth, if it wasn't for that Eli kid pulling you out of purgatory, you'd be in hell." Wham! Explode! He socked Luke in the stomach, causing him to gasp. The momentum was so hard that it exploded the pillar behind Luke. He fell to his knees, gasping for air. "Which is where you belong," Benjamin shot. Kick! He cocked back and leveled Luke like he was a soccer ball. I was so annoyed I thought my head was going to explode. It was a shared demeanor throughout our legion. There wasn't a person there who didn't want to tear that kid limb from limb. Luke had a hard time dealing with his faith when he first met with Max, and I know a part of him believed every word Benjamin was saying, and it tore me apart. If it had me feeling like that, I could only imagine the damage done to Sai and Jacob. Smash, smash, boom! Luke skipped into boulder after boulder before exploding against the arena wall. "I can't," Sai replied, turning away. Jacob hugged the girl, consoling her as she fought to stay composed. "You remember what happened at the summit. Luke needs this," Jacob replied. "It's his test. He can do this. He has the power to beat this kid. He just has to reach for it. Have faith in your brother." Pete, Eve, Sam, and I joined in consoling the girl. This fight looked impossible for Luke to win, and Benjamin's words were brutal. This was a complicated matter that was only getting worse. What did Jacob mean by "on the summit"? From the moment those thoughts entered my mind, the scenery changed. Everything seemed to be going backwards. I knew the sensation. It was similar to the feelings I felt right before I blacked out in front of Sam's lion. The slight pull in the midst of my belly was a clear indication that something wasn't right. "Focus, Tim," said a voice that seemed to ring all around me as the scenery and imagery changed around me. Before I could fathom what was going on, I was standing in the exact spot watching from the exact angle I had been watching on my television a month earlier during our training with Jade. I stared out at the training ground as Maxwell disappeared. "Well, let's get up this mountain," Jacob ordered. I ducked behind a rock as Jacob, Sai, and Luke passed by. Still in a conversation I remember vividly from the month before. I probably should have looked around or tried to figure out what was going on, but at the time I was just a kid. I was so used to my powers being on autopilot that I just learned to just go with things. "Really, Jake, what's with you and that guy?" Luke replied. "I mean, the guy said he didn't have anything to do with what happened to your mother. In my book, that's good enough. He seems like he took our parents' death hard. Do you really think it's fair to give him such a hard time? Why are you busting the guy's chops?" Jacob stared back at Luke with a stern, not giving glare. Why he continued to withhold so much information drove me crazy. It's like he almost got off on it. Sai tried to hide her interest with an innocent stare, but an idiot could see she was as confused by Jacob's attitude as anyone. I snuck into a prone position behind a huge tree that lay just off the path. "Luke, I just told you I'm not talking about it," he shot, shaking his head. Luke smiled with a joking chuckle. Sai tried to force a smile, but I can tell she was disappointed that Jacob wasn't spilling the beans. Luke gave him a foreshadowing smirk that threw both Sai and I off. "You owe me," he replied, pointing at Jacob. "What?" Jacob replied. "Don't what me," Luke fired. "You know what. You owe me." Jacob stared at him as if he was trying to figure him out for a second, before finally taking an exhausted sigh as if Luke's words were starting to jog his memory. He showed a begging demeanor as he threw his hands up in frustration. "Seriously? No way, not here," Jacob replied. "This is serious. You can't use that favor now. That's not fair." Luke pointed at him, holding in his laugh as Sai looked on, dazed and confused. "You asked me to lie for you so you wouldn't have to, Mr. Perfect," he explained. "You said you would do anything I said. That was the deal. You said anything. I did it, so spill it or go back on your word." Jacob rolled his eyes in a relenting fashion. In all the days I had known Jacob, he would always go out of his way to live up to expectations, so I can imagine how many times Luke covered for him. My guess was Luke was giving the task of having to explain his reasoning for dumping some poor girl. I really didn't care. I was more focused on whether or not Jacob was going to give in and spill the beans. Jacob gave Luke one more begging look before finally sighing and relenting with his story. "Look, I know the guy had nothing to do with my parents' death," Jacob replied. "But there was a reason why he had to leave our parents. He broke rules that made him a risk. It was his fault our parents had no one watching over them. Therefore, in my opinion, he's responsible for my mother not being here, okay? I know he cares about what happened to our parents, but so do I, and sometimes... Look, I'm still flesh and blood. My emotions get the best of me, too." Sai stared at Jacob, surprised by his words. Luke even looked as if he wasn't expecting his response. I proned next to another tree, working to get in a better position to eavesdrop on their conversation. But with their positioning, it wasn't easy to find a spot where I wouldn't be seen. Luke waited as if he was urging Jacob to continue. Jacob crossed his arms defiantly as a stare-down ensued between the two. "What do you mean?" Luke questioned, breaking the silence. "What did he do? I mean, how did he become a risk? Why did the light guard dismiss him? Jacob stared at Sai and Luke, as if he was debating whether or not to keep going before shaking his head in an impatiently agitated manner. One could say that he was being stubborn, but I could tell. Jacob had a look to him when I knew he was protecting me from something. He usually showcased it when I asked about my mother. I could tell when he was purposely trying to keep me from learning things he knew would hurt me. He had the same look that moment. My guess was he didn't want to taint their opinion of Max. Deal's over. I told you what I had against the guy. That was the deal. No more, no less. Let it go, Jacob replied. Besides, this mountain is becoming less stable by the second, and it's not like this isn't going to be hard enough. Add in the fact that you guys are both novices, we need every advantage we can get. I could tell by Luke's wondering eyes that they were communicating via BAU. Luke nodded in a terrible acting attempt. Sai stared at Jacob for a lasting second before she agreed. They began to walk as Luke turned to Jacob. "What is this place, anyways?" he replied, staring around the landscape. Sai rolled her eyes as she secured her backpack strap. "What?" Luke replied defensively. "It's Sinai," Sai shot, with another sarcastic roll of her eyes. Luke stopped and looked around before raising an eyebrow, surprised by Sai's words. "Like in the Bible?" he shot. "No kidding. I thought that mountain was on Earth." "No, she's not talking about the mountain. She's talking about the planet," Jacob corrected, shaking his head with a laugh. "This planet. It's the home of the largest and most dangerous mountain in existence, Sunder." Boom! As Jacob spoke, he pointed at the top of the mountain. Right on cue, it exploded, filling the atmosphere with a thick ash that seemed to burn our lungs as we breathed it in. It had smell of sulfur that made purgatory smell like a rose garden. Luke covered his mouth and nose as he jolted from the sudden explosion. "My gosh, man, that thing gave me a heart attack," he said, putting his hand over his heart. "I'm starting to dislike this Max guy myself. He tells us everyone else gets to learn and be taught in nice, friendly environments. Our training is climbing a freaking mountain, but not just any mountain, a freaking erupting volcano. I mean, this is crazy. We don't even have our powers yet, and we're supposed to make it where? All the way to the top?" Jacob nodded, acknowledging Luke's words. He pulled his water bottle from its holster as he walked. "That's the easy part," he replied. "You see that." As Jacob spoke, a huge serpent emerged from a cavern at the top of the mountain. It looked like a dragon with its bat-wing-like ears and large teeth. I stared at it, blown away as it slithered into another opening in the mountain. It wasn't its look that had me shook, but its length. Its body seemed to go on forever before its tail emerged. Luke looked like he wanted to swallow his tongue, and he looked brave compared to the look Sai gave. "There's a huge serpent that guards the summit," Jacob continued. "That's going to be the real test." Luke turned to Jacob, shaking his head angrily, pointing at the huge beast. "There's no way," he objected. "How? That thing is as big as the mountain. Not to mention it looks gross. How long is it?" Sai began to crack her knuckles nervously. Jacob picked up on it, staring her over before beginning his walk again. "We can sit here bellyaching and crying over what we inevitably have to do," Jacob shot, "or we can get this crap over." Sai tried to hide her nervousness with an awkward nod. "I agree," she replied. Luke took a deep breath, snatched Jacob's water bottle and poured it over his head. Jacob stared on unamused as Luke tossed the bottle back at him playfully. Jacob stared as the bottle bounced off his chest and hit the ground. He grunted and turned toward the mountain. Luke chuckled out loud, chasing after him with Sai on his tail. "Okay, Jake, man, wait up," he shot. I traveled behind them slowly, keeping my distance as they made their way up the mountain. It had been relatively peaceful. They dodged occasional boulders, but with Jacob's ability, it was a tamed experience. I could tell the worst was ahead of them. I was anointed, so my experience was easy. My ability gave me strength, stamina, and knowledge, which made the task a literal walk in the park. I couldn't say the same for Luke and Sai in their pre-anointed state, especially Luke. He looked like he was carrying a bull as he fought with every step. Jacob ignored everything around them, focusing on buffering his way up the mountains for the others. "I have to rest," Luke replied, falling to his butt. "Either this thing is getting heavier or I'm getting weaker." He dropped to his butt in a collapsing manner. He reached around, taking his backpack off before fighting to a knee. He rummaged through it, grabbing a water bottle of his own and falling to his butt. Jacob turned back, frustrated, as Sai took the opportunity to rest as well. They both leaned up against an unstable mountain, to say the least. Sai copied Luke, grabbing a water bottle and pouring it on her head. It was suffocatingly hot, and it only got hotter as we inched higher up the mountain. I could only imagine how tired they were. We walked for at least an hour, and if we didn't look down the mountain, you probably wouldn't notice the progress. The mountain looked just as high as when we were standing at the bottom. "Your faith is getting weaker. I can feel your faith energy fading, which is causing your bag to become heavier." Luke looked up before angrily tossing his water bottle across the terrain in frustration. Sai stared at him sympathetically before dropping her head in exhaustion as she rested her elbows on her knees. "Why doesn't mine stick like yours?" Luke replied. "It's like I have to keep convincing myself over and over that I deserve this. It's hard." Sai raised her head, giving another sympathizing look before laying her head on his shoulder. Luke acknowledged her movement by putting his arms around her, accepting her olive branch. "You're new in the faith, Luke," Sai replied. "You can't keep getting frustrated. Me and Jacob have had years of training, and I'm still terrible at this. Don't you get it? It's a process. First, you have to have the faith, which should be the easy part, but rarely is, and is especially hard in your case. Then you have to take that faith energy and utilize it in a clear and positive manner. The type of concentration and focus it takes to utilize that power without being anointed is crazy. For all of us, not just you." I was getting the understanding of how their powers worked. It was a crash course, but it was illuminating all the same. Our powers didn't work like that. Our power just was. If we believed, it manifests. It didn't take any thought. We were one with the world. Verts had to understand the subatomic force and meld it with their faith powers. I always looked at the Dom as so privileged, but understanding the focus, patience, and concentration it took made me pity them. To wield such power was a blessing, but having to maintain such a strong focus definitely put things in context. Just thinking about it exhausted me. "You don't know the power of faith. You haven't seen it used enough times to be sure of its connection to you," Jacob added. "Even if you weren't using the faith power as literally as you're using it right now, it's exactly like that in the real world. Initially, the power of Father Yahweh is new and powerful, but as you go through life, things become chaotic and crazy. You lose sight of that power, and when you're new in the faith, the minute things get hard, we tend to go back to what we know. We put belief in ourselves. That's the living example of what you're going through now. It's why the more your faith wavers, the heavier your backpack becomes. That's what this whole training is about. With every step we take up this mountain, the stakes rise, and our faith and our ability to believe Father Yahweh will allow us to attain our goals when we wane. This is a test of faith, Luke." Luke acknowledged his words with a smile, rising to his feet. I would like to say he showed a renewed determination. He winced a little as he threw his backpack on his back. Sai, who was acting like a quiet third wheel, rose behind him. "I'll try to remember that," he replied. It's hard to believe, especially when believing Father Yahweh is able is not my problem." "What do you mean?" Sai asked. "I should be, not here," Luke replied. "All those people, the ones who have to be judged. I mean, what makes me different? What did I do to earn a second chance?" "Luke, come on, man," Jacob shot, not knowing what to say. "You shouldn't think like that, Luke," Sai cut in. "Why? It's the truth. If it wasn't for your brother, I would be in the same position, on my way to hell or purgatory in the darkness, and I deserved it. I had no faith that my mother was in a better place, even though every day of my life my father told me she was. I had a beautiful life. I couldn't have asked for more, but I felt I had room to question God for not knowing my mother and father. If I had just had the faith to believe that I would have the opportunity to see them again, like you guys, I was angry and spoiled. I didn't want to have to believe," Luke exploded. "How do I deserve this? And people who had it far worse than I did don't get this opportunity." With every word he spoke, I could see the bag on his back gain weight until it fell to the ground like a ton of bricks. "That's exactly the thoughts I'm talking about," Jacob replied. "Luke, every person in the world can say that. If I hadn't seen what I did as a young kid, or Sai hadn't been taught by your father, who's to say we wouldn't have ended up the same way you were? The world has extremes, man. Some people have it harder, others have it easier, but we all have the opportunity to accept Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. Everyone. Most don't take that opportunity. You can sit here and talk about what Tim did, but the truth of the matter is, you turned to Jesus when you needed him the most, and that's what allowed Tim to find you. It was your choice. Most get chance after chance to turn to Jesus, and they arrogantly pass it up time after time, because they would rather do what they want and believe what is convenient. You turned to power that you knew down in your heart was there." Luke nodded. His words stuck with me. Now Jacob's words made sense. I knew exactly what I needed to do, and more importantly, I knew what Luke needed to do. As I came to that realization, I felt a trance-like feeling, and before I knew it, I was back in the arena. I stumbled before catching myself and sitting on a bench. "Tim, are you okay?" Eve noticed, rushing to my side. As she did, everyone else took notice and followed suit, except for Jake. He was still focused on Luke and Sai. "Yeah, but I think I had another blackout," I replied, trying to get my bearings. Pete and Uriah looked at each other with puzzled stares. "Yeah, but this time I think I went to the past," I replied, shaking the cobwebs. "That's impossible," Uriah added, looking me over. "I know, I was surprised myself," I replied. "No, he doesn't mean it in that way," Pete explained. "He means literally that isn't possible. Tim, you didn't time travel. Your body was here the entire time. That's not how time travel works. Your body stayed here. It never became light, and without that transformation, time travel isn't possible." Their words caught me off guard. I stared at Pete in a begging manner. "Well, if it wasn't time travel, what was it?" I pressed. They both stared at each other with blank expressions. "What happened? I mean, what makes you think you time traveled?" Beth asked, looking me in the eye. "Well, I did. I went back a month ago. You remember, Eve, the trailer TV thingy? Well, I was there, like physically there. I saw what you guys went through, Sai. I saw the conversation you guys had with Luke on the mount," I replied, staring at Sai. She stared at me with a telling demeanor. "Do you think you're going to be all right?" Pete replied, placing his hand on my shoulder and looking me in my eyes like a doctor. "I'm fine, but whatever it was, I think Father Yahweh wanted me to see it. I replied, rising to my feet. I think I can help Luke. I think I'm supposed to. I sat, trying to regain my bearings as Eve, Pete, and Beth cared for me. My body felt completely drained. I had developed another ability, and my body was evolving to compensate at the worst possible time. What do you mean? Are you saying you believe you're supposed to help Luke? Pete questioned. I could barely speak. My eyes were flickering like a faulty light bulb, and I could feel every vein and cell in my body changing. It felt like it was taking all my energy to remain solid. I don't know, I managed. Just give me a second. Tim, you don't look too good, Sean replied, kneeling in front of me. I've never seen anything like it. Look at me, Pete replied, staring in my eyes like a doctor. Yeah, that was definitely a new ability. Your body's adapting again. Luke and Benjamin continued to fight. Luke was blocking and dodging, bounding around the stadium as Benjamin toyed with the boy. Catch this one, pretty boy, Benjamin replied. Punch! He leveled Luke with a punch to the face that Luke slightly parried. Kick! He caught Luke with a spinning back kick that Luke attempted to block with little effect as he slid backwards. Crash! He landed hard against a nearby wall. Woo! Benjamin taunted. Punch! Benjamin landed another punch as Luke's blocking body ricocheted off the wall once again. Crash! Luke's body crumbled the pillar as the two boys met in a battle of wills trying to cancel the other out. Luke, Sai replied, looking away. I fought to stand as Pete and Sean forced me back down, with little resistance from my leaning body. Tim, you can't stand, Eve replied. What are you trying to do? I took a deep breath as my body began to ache. I need to talk to Luke, I grunted, willing myself up. I closed my eyes and prepared to use my BAU. Shut up! It felt like someone had contained an explosion inside my skull. The pain was excruciating and disorienting. Ah! I let out in pain as my body was flooded with an electrical shock. Tim, stop trying to use your BAU, Pete ordered. Your body is overloading with information right now. I can't explain it, but something in your body is evolving. Don't use your faith or light energy until we can get it under control. His eyes were vacant with light as he surveyed me. Your body is literally reforming itself, Pete continued. I'd never seen anything like this. It's not like the DOMs at all. Your body is being almost reformatted like some supercomputer. I fought to my feet once again, using all the strength I had in me. I couldn't use my BAU, so I was going to have to find a way to get to Luke and tell him the old-fashioned way. But it was easier said than done. It took every bit of faith energy I had to command my nervous system to work accordingly. To take a step took forever. Tim, what are you trying to do? Sean asked, seconding Eve. Luke's problem, I continued. He can't control his faith energy, not because he doesn't believe God will give him the power, but deep down he doesn't want Father Yahweh to give him the power. This guy has him believing that he deserves this. He's in his head. Then tell me, I'll transmit it to Luke, Eve begged. No, I fired, shocking her. I have to tell him. Just telling him what's happening won't be enough. I made my way around Eve and Beth as they begrudgingly moved to the side. Come on, Tim. Luke's getting pounded by the second, Pete added. Who cares who says it? It's about it being said. No, it's not. No one can say it because they haven't seen what I've seen or felt what I've felt, I continued. It needs to come from me. As we bickered back and forth, Benjamin toyed with Luke, flashing from spot to spot, tripping him, humiliating him in front of the whole crowd. He laughed as Luke helplessly swung at him, way too slow to land a punch. Jacob looked like he wanted to destroy him. "You come to my world and have the nerve to challenge my legion?" he replied, continuing his humiliation. Trip! Luke landed face first as he grabbed his legs out from under him. The sections outside of the Earthborn section began to laugh hysterically as Luke fought to regain his footing. Grab! Just as Luke made it back to all fours, Benjamin appeared behind him once more, grasping his ankle. "This is just embarrassing. I mean, weren't you going to shut me up?" he screamed, hoisting Luke high in the air. Slap! He slammed Luke to the ground with jarring force, as we all watched helplessly. Sai covered her eyes with every blow. Jacob was seething. His normal calm and collected demeanor was replaced with an angry scowl that was piercing a hole through Benjamin. Benjamin walked over to Luke's limp body in a mocking manner, placating to the crowd the entire time. "And you don't even have the presence of mind to know how in over your head you actually are," he replied. "And then you threaten me!" Grab! He scooped Luke up by the back of his uniform and hoisted him up once again. He replied, sucking his teeth in a demeaning manner. Punch! He socked Luke with a cross that sent his head leaning to the opposite side. "How stupid do you have to be?" he replied, socking him again. Punch! He socked him in the stomach, causing Luke to keel over as he held his helpless body with one hand, as the crowd continued to mock Luke. Sai was hardly able to contain herself as she fought to intervene as Jacob prevented her from moving. "Let me go, Jacob!" she ordered powerlessly. "I'm dismissing my waiver. Luke wasn't ready for this. He's still too new in the faith. We should have never let him fight in this thing." I fought to get out of the barrier with everything I had in me, but my body was like an overloaded computer. Every action I took lagged, and it was killing me to watch what was continuing to transpire as a result. Luke exhaled loudly as Benjamin throttled him with a kick to the stomach. Grab! He tossed Luke like a paperweight, switching hands as he did. Grab! He caught him one last time with a firm grip. Luke's eyes lit up as he channeled what little faith energy he had into his fist. Wham! Luke landed a flipping double back kick square to the nose of Benjamin, breaking his grasp. Benjamin chuckled, knocking the dust off his nose, not even scratched by Luke's attack. "I'm trying my hardest to not take this personal," Benjamin continued, mocking. "But if you keep insulting me by swinging at me with that laughable faith energy, I might be in jeopardy of ending you out of sheer annoyance." I finally made it close enough to the edge of the barrier, trying my hardest to get to Luke before Benjamin mounted another attack. I could feel part of my body returning to normal as I hit the barrier. "I can't," Luke replied, falling to one knee. "Big talk, Fairy, but if I could just get a bead on how to sustain my power, you'd be singing a different tune." Miss! He shot forward, swinging wildly, as Benjamin dodged him with relative ease. Grab! As he dodged, he went under Luke's punch, grasping him around the neck. "Pathetic," Benjamin replied. Slam! He lunged forward, plowing Luke into the ground. Oof! Luke let out, as Benjamin used the momentum of his blow to flip backward. He landed on Luke's gut, knocking the wind out of the boy. Luke turned over, groaning loudly. Twirl! He grabbed Luke's arm and turned, pulling him over his back, tossing the boy like a bullet. Wham! Luke hit a nearby pillar, wincing as he flipped violently across the arena. "That language!" Wham! He flashed across the arena, cutting off Luke's trajectory. He nailed the boy with a kick, sending the boy high into the air. "Is..." Wham! he appeared at Luke's ascent and nailed him with another axe kick. Nuts! Wham! He mimicked Caddy's moves against Beth, playing ping-pong with Luke's flailing body. The boy bounced from spot to spot, leveling Luke with crushing blows. Appropriate! Wham! He landed one last roundhouse, sending Luke soaring into the ground below. Crash! Luke exploded into the terrain. His lifeless body caused a hush to fall over the crowd. It was brutal, and even the crowd seemed a little upset by the brutality of the attack. As the dust settled, Luke finally moved. He fought to raise his head, as you could see the pain written all over his face. "In this realm, you earth toilet pig," Benjamin ranted, stalking Luke. "I'll use this opportunity to beat some respect into that vulgar earthborn brain of yours." I could only imagine the pain he was enduring. His readings were off the charts. It ate at me, because a part of me believed he wanted it. I could feel what he felt, and his biorhythms angered me. He wanted this. He was almost begging for it. "What? With that?" he replied, spitting out a mouthful of blood. "You're going to have to do better than that, Powder Puff." "Luke, stop it!" Sai shot. "Do I look like my cousin to you?" Benjamin replied, chuckling. "Am I supposed to go all wah and wig out on you? You know, opening myself up for one of your close-range attacks?" Luke shook his head, frustrated. I didn't know if that was Luke's plan or he was asking for more punishment, but I had to admit, if it was, Benjamin making a mistake was the best he could hope for. "Oh, did I shatter your last bit of hope?" Benjamin continued to mock. "Good. You don't deserve to be here, kid. You don't deserve this. Not an ounce of it." "Look who's talking!" I screamed, almost falling out of the barrier. Luke and Benjamin stared at me. My sudden outburst quieted the crowd even further, and all eyes were on me. It meant less than nothing to me. This was my opportunity, and all that mattered to me was helping Luke. "Luke, listen to me. Don't let his words affect you. Because yes, he's right, you don't deserve it," I continued. My words caused pause as Sai and Jacob stared at me, thrown by my words. I was speaking from one knee, fighting a blistering migraine. "Don't you get it? None of us deserve this. Not you, not me, and definitely not him," I replied, almost tearing up. I was so frustrated. "What makes this guy better than you? Do you think he's perfect?" I fought to stand as Jacob and Sai ran to my side. "Tim, your body is evolving. You have to give it time to heal," Jacob warned. "No, I have to say this," I replied, with my head still spinning. "Luke, none of us deserve this, but if anyone has a right to be here, it's us." I paused, thinking of how arrogant I sounded, and quickly went to clarify. "I mean, us as in Earthborn, not us as in, you know, our Legion. I mean, our Legion is included, but..." "Tim, you're losing them. The point?" Sai continued, shouldering me. I breathed deep, finally feeling the effects of my transformation wearing off. "Look, Luke, I know what you're doing, and I understand. You feel you don't deserve this. You feel you deserve hell. And if it wasn't for me, that's where you would be. You can't fight the feeling. You think you don't belong here. You see these beautiful people and surroundings, and you think, why do I get this, while so many others who were less fortunate don't? These are good people who devoted their life to this stuff, and you think you cheated your way in." Luke looked away, ashamed, as if my words were hitting home. I fought to hold myself up as I continued. "You don't get that it's that very feeling that makes you strong," I replied, surprising everyone with my emotion. "Do you remember what Jacob said to that Howell kid in his trial? It's our struggle that makes us strong. Yeah, you missed your opportunity to live it while you were alive, but when your back was against the wall, you turned to your faith. I was in purgatory with you. I saw how many souls were devoured down there, and you probably saw 10 times what I did. None of them turned to Father Yahweh. You did. You survived as long as you did because you had faith. That's why Father Yahweh protected you." Luke nodded, taking in my words as Benjamin chuckled condescendingly. "You think this arrogant fool deserves to be here more than you? What has he been through?" I continued. "He stands in front of us talking about what he's gone through. He's crying about what people like him have sacrificed to get here. What have we sacrificed? What have we endured? Did he survive weeks in a purgatory and still find the strength to call on Christ? Did he survive years in a world set up for him to fail? No. If your claim to this realm is being lucky, what is his? Stop sitting here and getting the pulp beat out of you to earn Father Yahweh's love. You had it when you survived purgatory. You had it when you survived a life on earth, and you're going to have it when you kick this guy's face all over his precious realm. You always had it, even when you didn't want it. And if you care so much about those people you fear won't get your opportunity..." I stared Luke sternly in the eye as the fire that had been fueling in me swelled up. "Give it to them. They still have a chance. Do what Uriah's doing for his dad. Father Yahweh loves them just like he loves you. Have you ever stopped to think it's why you were saved? You know their struggle. You sympathized with them. Let that be your fuel. Let that be your purpose. Use those people to channel and sustain your faith energy. Stop paying penitence by getting your butt kicked and save them," I shouted across the stadium. Benjamin became uneasy as Luke rose to his feet with confidence. "I'm sick of this," Benjamin let out, shooting towards Luke. Swing! He cocked back with a home run swing that was determined to send Luke's head into the upper deck. "Luke, move!" Sai screamed. Catch! Luke caught Benjamin's punch without so much as a flinch. "Why," Luke replied, holding Benjamin's punch in his hand, "I'm not the one in trouble." Throw! He tossed Benjamin like he was weightless. Benjamin landed in a fighting stance, surprised by Luke's reaction. Luke turned to me with an affirming nod. "You just had to stick your nose in this thing, didn't you, Captain Save-A-Lot?" He poked with a smile. Sai threw her arms around me, squeezing the life out of me, smiling from ear to ear before planting a kiss on my cheek. "That's what I'm talking about," Jacob replied, patting me on the back. The crowd exploded as I turned, giving a nod to the rest of the Legion as I finally regained full control of my senses. I tried to hide my exuberance behind a stern look, but a smile peeked through. Luke was back, and no one was happier to see it than me. "Is he always like that?" Sean replied, turning to Pete. I turned at the sound of Sean's words. Eve blew a kiss in my direction as I nodded bashfully, trying my best to remain transparent. I turned back. Unable to hear their exchange, they continued as she stared at me with admiration. "I can't say that I've known him long, but whatever he has, he empties it when it comes to his friends," Eve replied before cutting her eyes in my direction. "He waits until the absolute last minute, but you can count on him to be there to take a bullet or show you how to withstand one." Benjamin stared a hole through Luke. He knew the game had changed as he threw off his coat angrily. Pete broke in, shaking his head, disagreeing as he watched me, beaming with pride. "It's so much more than that," he shot, catching the attention of everyone still in earshot. "Tim isn't the type to make a spectacle. He isn't the type to do anything that would put attention square on him. He's generally more of an even keel guy, but he knew that wouldn't work with Luke." I get so much credit for being a natural leader, and when it comes to the logistics, I can hold my own, but I will never understand people with the foresight he does, Pete replied. It's truly his blessing. Eve gazed at me, smitten. Sam stared at me, proud to call me family. I didn't think about it, Sam cut in, but you're right. The guy literally carried us through this thing. As they spoke, Benjamin fought to his feet, wiping the debris off of his armor. Lucky grab, he replied angrily. His hands were badly burned. Luke was so fast, I didn't even see him use his lightning to stop Benjamin's blow. Oh, luck has nothing to do with this, Luke replied, as the light dissipated in his hand. I didn't understand this faith thing, but it has slowly dawned on me. It was people like you that helped make me that way. Your traditions and man-made rules were like an anchor constantly holding me down. You always made me feel like I had to fit in to be a Christian, like I had to earn acceptance. I couldn't ask questions about things that didn't make sense. I couldn't cry about things that hurt me. You never helped me understand. You just told me I was wrong for stepping outside of what made you feel comfortable. It made me hate the church and the people in it. I saw them as a religious country club that cared more about their church and pastor than Father Yahweh and Jesus. I thought they were the biggest hypocrites ever. They ignored the poor, widows, and fatherless children. They broke their arms patting themselves on the back because they showed up and made some preacher rich with a promise that by doing that they'd someday gain the same wealth. It was a sham to me. I never felt Father Yahweh's presence in them. I didn't want to be like those people that believed in a preacher or church and had no relationship with Father Yahweh. I wanted to just believe and follow the words, but I always felt like that wasn't enough. I always felt I needed to do more. I felt I was wrong because I didn't feel the need to be more like them. So it turned me away. It drove me further and further away from the Holy Spirit. But being here now, with my sister and our friends, I see what true faith is. I see what a true Christian is. They are flawed, scared, insecure. They aren't playing a part. They are true to themselves, and that gives a new definition to the word Christian. I always saw the presence in Jacob, but I felt he earned it. I was too ashamed to tell him that my faith wasn't as strong as his. But now that I'm here, I see he's not perfect. Neither is my sister or any of them. But they all try hard and hate sin. I'm finally getting it. They have made me realize that being a Christian is about following rules, but not yours. It's about following his rules. All the crap about traditions and etiquette, you can eat it. I set the standards of what I believe a Christian is, and if I'm wrong, let Father Yahweh judge me. My faith is strong because I realize what the very meaning of the word is. It's faith in Him, not you and your man-made laws and traditions. It's taken me a while to get it, but after Tim's words, I finally believe Father Yahweh has a purpose for me. Those people need us, and you won't stop me from helping them. I have all the power I will ever need, and even with all your arrogance and bravado, you still don't get it. The truth is, faith isn't earned, it's accepted. As he spoke, his power exploded. His power was beyond belief. I could hardly stand as his power continued to climb higher, tearing apart the arena in the process. It was so fierce it was causing my eyes to tear just being as close as I was to him. "Where are you guys getting this power?" Benjamin replied, staring at Luke, unable to believe what he was witnessing. "Let's get you out of here," Jacob replied, pulling me into the barrier and motioning for Sai to follow. Things are about to get crazy. As we hurried back into the barrier, Luke stalled as the power orb around him dissipated. He opened his eyes, revealing light tattoos that outlined his eye sockets, and his hair had grown exponentially. This ought to be good enough, he replied with a smile. Like you said, I wouldn't want to destroy the place. It's not fair. We've trained for a century. How can you guys gain this type of power so fast? Benjamin continued, staring him up and down. What are you guys that you can tap into such powerful faith energy? Luke smiled, staring him up and down. I don't know, and to be honest, that's your problem, Luke replied, flexing as the power surged through him. I made a promise to shut you up, and after all you've done today, you better believe that's going to happen. Benjamin stared at Luke as he continued to wrap his hand. I wish this kid was as nervous as I was, Eve added nervously. She was right. He was afraid, and there was no doubt about that. But I still sensed confidence in him. He had something in the cupboard, and I was anxious to see what it was. Impressive, Benjamin replied. I never figured this would be easy. Smart, Luke added. Luke, be careful, Jacob continued. You're powerful, but don't get cocky. Walk the line between determined and thankful. It keeps your mind focused on the plan. Through doing that, you won't get full of yourself. Luke nodded in agreement, acknowledging Jacob's words with a gamesman-like stare. Those would have been good tips for me. But at that point, I had no thought about it other than the good it did for Luke's ability. Well, let's see if this isn't just a fancy new package with no substance, Benjamin replied, pulling his sword from its sheath. Sai looked at me with a hoping stare, cracking her knuckles nervously. Let's get started, he replied, his eyes lighting up. Whoosh! He powered up immediately, exploding with unreal power. His hair grew a long way down his back, showcasing his heritage. It was an intimidating sight, but Luke's power still outweighed his by a sizable amount, although Luke wasn't showcasing it. He stood calmly, staring across at a smiling Benjamin. Come on, Luke, Sai hoped out loud. Yeah, you can do it, Eve seconded. Step! Before I could blink, the two boys shot towards each other, interacting with exploding force. It made the blast between Danielle and Adam look like a firecracker. The explosion created a crack that ran clear around the wall of the arena. Man, I think this place is made to repair itself, Pete replied in awe. Yeah, after that blow, this thing would be in pieces, Sam added as the wall began to repair itself immediately. The two exchanged blade strikes as they breezed past each other, switching sides with connecting weapon blows. Luke landed in a three-point stance as Benjamin landed in a squat. Luke still sported a stern stare, while Benjamin was smiling from ear to ear. Man, this Nazarite spirit is making me love this a lot more than I should, pretty boy, he gushed. Luke pulled his hair out of his face before cracking his neck. That's substance enough for you? Luke replied. Come on, Benjamin grunted, leaping into action. He shot toward Luke, swinging his sword wildly as Luke countered frantically. Man, they're fast, he replied. Can you guys follow this? I can't see a thing. Swoosh! Benjamin swung forcefully as Luke leaped across the terrain, gaining distance. Zoom! 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 Luke began to send exploding lightning shots as Benjamin dodged them at will. Where are you running to? Benjamin replied, flipping gracefully. I thought you liked close range. Flash! He shot toward Luke as he prepared himself for another attack. What's going on? Eve grunted. Yeah, I know, Sam seconded. All I see is explosions. His blows were so forceful that they were moving Luke even though he was blocking every blow. Fight! Benjamin continued, attacking ferociously. Shot! He let out an electrical shot that erupted as he shot toward Luke yet again. A little more substance than you were expecting, huh? Luke toyed, stone-faced. Shot! Luke continued to block as sparks flew from Benjamin's electrically charged weapon. The electricity infused into his weapon seemed to catch him off guard. Gotcha! Benjamin grunted, going in for the killing blow. Zap! Luke's eyes grew large as he erupted with an explosion of power, as Benjamin leaped backwards, narrowly dodging his explosion. What is going on? Sai replied, turning to me and Jacob. I held my hand up for her to give me a second. I needed to concentrate. It took everything I had to keep up with their actions. Jacob ignored Sai as he continued to stare forward, lost in thought. Sizzle! Benjamin landed as smoke emitted from his body from Luke's attack. He licked his finger and pressed it against his armor, causing it to sizzle from the moisture. Hot, he smirked. Close one. Zap! Benjamin angrily missiled a light energy shot at Luke as he narrowly dodged. Flash! Luke attacked again as the two clashed weapons, countering each other perfectly. It turned into a contest of faith energy as the two shots exploded into each other. Luke's faith energy was a powerful black color, while Benjamin's was hot red. Their power hit each other like a halfback and a linebacker. The two continued to exert power, opposing one another with the sheer power of faith energy. The ground split open from their power. It was otherworldly to watch these two teenage behemoths going toe-to-toe. Is that all you got? Luke mocked. The power dissipated as the two shot toward each other, connecting weapons. The power was so distinct, I could hear howling like when two microphones interfered with each other, almost like they were on two different frequencies. Everyone winced from the sound as the two continued to spike in power as they clashed. I'm going to end this, Benjamin warned, shouldering into Luke, leveraging his weapon into Luke's twin talons. The two withdrew in regrouping manners. The smile was no longer present as Benjamin glared angrily across the arena at Luke. Don't let me stop you, Luke grunted, leaping backwards. Dissipate! Benjamin's energy disappeared along with Luke's as Luke retreated across the arena. You asked for it, Benjamin warned. Luke smirked as Benjamin raised his sword high in the air. It looked like a sultan's sword made of gold with a pearly white handle. The blade sparkled with white diamond engravings in the shape of flames all over it. It was a masterpiece of crafting. Have you taken the time to name those weapons of yours? Benjamin replied. Luke's daggers were a pearly black diamond with white and gold handles. He stared at them in an inspecting manner. No, why would I? Luke replied. Benjamin chuckled, running his finger along his blade. Have you ever wondered why your weapon evolves as you do, Earthborn? He shot. Luke stared at him without responding. I could feel his biorhythm. He was as calm as a cucumber. I didn't sense malice or anger. There was just an intense level of focus and determination. His spirit was so dense, it felt as if it could cut me if I got close enough. Benjamin, on the other hand, I could sense his faith energy slowly dwindling. It was the opposite of when the fight began. It's made from forged anointed metal. It's forged with your faith energy, so obviously as you grow, it grows. It's Father Yahweh's way of giving you the ultimate weapon, Benjamin continued. Now, you may once again see it as tradition, but the truth of the matter is, it seems disrespectful not to name your most loyal companion. Flame! As he spoke, the sword erupted in flames as it hung over his head. This is Thurman, he said, pointing the sword at Luke. Luke didn't flinch. He continued to stand in a defensive stance, unimpressed by Benjamin's display. "It's on fire, but how?" Sam replied, turning to Jacob. "Yeah, I thought Zek said light energy was cold at its core," I added. "Yes, his is," Jacob replied. "I'm sure Jade explained that everything that lives has faith energy in it." We nodded patiently, waiting on his response. We learned so much, it was hard to keep up with everything. It was a catalog that only came rushing back when someone asked the right question. "Well, think of that in reverse," Jacob replied. "Do you find it weird that Verts and Els have elemental abilities, but Doms only have light energy?" I shook my head no. Jacob showed something that resembled a smile before leveling with me. "Well, we do. That it is transferred into pure light energy, but at its core, it is an element. Like the Verts, we too have two. One that gives us our immense strength, and the other that gives us our speed. Doms are just so powerful that you only see the densest form of our power distribution. You guys have the same ability, which is where you get your super speed or strength, but the limitation of your light energy minimizes your power distribution, so that it is dense in one or the other." "So, what are you at your core?" Sam pressed, turning to him. Jacob cut his eyes in a jeering manner. "Wouldn't you like to know?" Jacob replied, staring forward. Sai placed her hand on her head, playfully exhausted by our stupidity. "It's not commonly shared, Sam, or at least not both," Sai replied. "It's like Verts with their compositions, and Els with their subsets. It makes us more susceptible to counters." As we joked and talked, the heated battle between the two mammoth prospects continued. Benjamin's sword's flame seemed to start from its tip and traveled clear up his arm, making it look like one of his arms were literally connected to the sword. "Through Thermae, I have the power to absorb the light energy in the atmosphere," Benjamin explained. As he spoke, the sky formed into a fire cloud. The clouds were blackish red and thundered loudly. They nearly mirrored Benjamin's biorhythms with their fluctuations. The clouds crackled as the lightning shots converged, then slowed, morphing into huge fireballs of electricity. "Element Gamma, Fire Command, Flare Shower," he commanded, slicing his sword in an ushering manner. "Hey, pretty boy, try to dodge this." Zoom! One of the balls shot toward Luke, and it was on target. Luke stood unwavering as it hurtled toward him, moving at the speed of light. "What are you doing, Luke? Move!" Eve screamed as Luke stared at the incoming assault. The shot seemed to hit Luke flush. We all waited with bated breath as the smoke from the shot dissipated, showcasing an empty space. There was no one there. "That's not my name," Luke replied calmly. Everyone searched the arena for him, including Benjamin, who was standing with his sword extended. "Hey!" Luke screamed, startling him. He stood behind him with his arms crossed. Benjamin swung wildly at the sound of his voice. His strikes hit nothing but air as Luke vanished into thin air. Benjamin quickly gained his composure in an effort to save face. "Big mistake," Benjamin replied with a snide smile. "Go!" Zoom, zoom, zoom! Benjamin's biorhythms went haywire, showing his obvious nervousness. The clouds crackled as the unstable fireballs seemed to form twice as fast. He swung his sword back and forth, sending fireballs at Luke rapidly. Luke, like Jacob had done in his trials, appeared and disappeared, narrowly dodging them all. "Luke!" Sai uttered. I placed my hand on her shoulder, calming her. I gave her a consoling wink. She nodded, taking my words at face value. "You can see him?" she replied via BAU. "Is he all right?" I playfully mocked her exhausted performance from earlier as she did playfully. I laughed out loud as I finally relented. He's more than all right. Just give it a second, I replied. Her eyes changed to a curious look at the sound of my words. Everyone's attention immediately peaked at the sound of my words. Man, if we can't see him move, he has to be as fast as Jacob, Sam added. I shook my head, preparing to answer him, but before I could, I was cut off by Jacob. No, the show-off's faster, Jacob replied, crossing his arms with a grin. Everyone turned to Jacob, blown away by his words. I nodded, agreeing with his statement as Benjamin confidently continued to send meteor-like fireballs at Luke. He smiled confidently as the last explosion went off. Obviously not physically, but throw in his wormholes and he has a short edge on me. For now, Jacob cut, smiling proudly. Where is he? Pete wondered out loud. I kept my eyes focused on the boy as he stopped inches behind Benjamin. Impressive, Benjamin let out as Luke swung. Flash! Benjamin flipped across the arena just as Luke took a swing, narrowly missing him. He smiled as he turned to Luke. Drip. Even I was surprised as Benjamin turned around, showcasing a bloody nose and lip. Man, he baited him perfectly, Uriah added. I slowly recreated the fight scenario in my mind. Luke never struck at Benjamin's back. He anticipated his path and cracked him. Luke was an instinct guy, and with his faith as high as it was, I could tell he was in a zone. Call your weapon what you want, it still has to beat me, Luke replied, and that isn't happening, no matter what name you give it. Benjamin snickered, staring at Luke. It's been a while since I've been this evenly matched with anyone, Benjamin replied. Luke looked him over with an emotionless, cold stare. Evenly matched? Luke replied coldly. This isn't even me trying. Benjamin's eyes showed an immediate reaction to Luke's words. You finished? Luke continued. Benjamin stared like a deer in headlights, unable to move or form a defense. It was like Luke moved in a blink of an eye. I never saw him move. His speed was beyond anything I'd seen. I thought he was fast before, but he wasn't bluffing. He couldn't have been trying. He was so fast, even I couldn't follow him. Oof! Benjamin coughed up blood. Checkmate, Luke replied sternly, glaring at Benjamin's pain-filled face. Pop! Pop! The electricity popped and crackled as he stood with his arm resting on Benjamin's chest. He held him in the air as Benjamin convulsed, trying to remain conscious. His eyes grew big as Luke whispered into his ear. The only weapon I need is faith, and thanks to you, I have it in spades. I found my purpose, he whispered, still holding Benjamin in the air. I'm not here to impress people like you. I'm here to save people like me. Oomph! He tossed Benjamin's body on the ground and turned to walk away. As you can probably tell, I'm not the most conventional guy. The fabulous flamboyancy you see wasn't always a part of my palette. It took a while for me to become comfortable enough to exhibit who I truly am. I should have been the first to have an open mind, but I guess my years of acceptance have caused me to become arrogant. I know you have no reason to accept my words, but I truly do apologize. My sister's the one you owe the apology to, Luke responded, turning to the boy. Maybe now that this crap is over, we can finally start mending the bad blood between our legions. At the end of the day, we all just want to do Father Yahweh's will. As for me, don't sweat it. If anybody knows what it's like to become arrogant and dismissive, it's me. The boy nodded, losing consciousness just as Luke finished his sentence. The medic made it to him, covering him with light as he vanished. I stared at Luke as a moment of silence ensued before an eruption from both the crowd and the rest of the Legion. Jacob hoisted me up euphorically. Are you kidding me? this, I screamed, jumping up and down as her and Eve embraced each other. Man, my heart can't take this for much longer, Pete spouted, falling back into a seat directly behind him. You're telling me, Sam seconded. I pulled Pete to his feet as we all trotted out to meet Luke, who stood bashfully waiting for his congratulating legion. He humbly waved and bowed to the crowd as they went crazy cheering. We were actually doing it. We were constantly at the precipice of defeat, yet we found a way to win each match, and now we were one man from this being all over. One man from winning.